Kevin. So good evening, everyone. This is the meeting of the Planning Advisory Committee for the date of May 16th, 2023. As we gather, we recognize that we are on Treaty 3 lands, which are steeped in rich Indigenous history and home to many First Nations and Métis people today. We continue to be thankful for the partnerships with Indigenous people. We give thanks for the many blessings we enjoy in the city of Kenora. We seek wisdom in our minds, clearness in our thinking, truth in our speaking, and always love in our hearts. Let these principles guide us in our decision-making. Prior to calling to the meeting to order, please ensure that your microphone is on mute, and please be mindful of what is visible to the public in your surrounding. Please note that this meeting is being recorded, and by continuing to be in this meeting, you are consenting to be recorded. Tap the Leave Meeting button to opt out and exit this session. When it is time for public comments, I will address the participant by the name that was used to register for this virtual PAC meeting. Once your name has been called, please then unmute your microphone or on your telephone. All persons addressing the committee shall state their full name, mailing address, and must direct their comments through myself, the chair. Decisions will be mailed or emailed to the applicant, agent, or other interested parties who have provided their mailing address and or the email address to the Secretary Treasurer. Recent changes to the Province of Ontario Bill 23, the More Homes Built Faster Act, have changed who has the right to appeal decisions made by the Planning Advisory Committee. Other than the applicant, only a specified person or public body, as defined in Section 1, subsection 1 of the Planning Act, has the ability to appeal the decision to the Ontario Land Tribunal. Notice of appeal for a minor variance application must be filed with the Secretary Treasurer within 20 days of the making of the decision, and the notice of appeal for a land division application must be filed with the Secretary Treasurer within 20 days of the mailing of the notice. The Secretary Treasurer for the Planning Advisory Committee is Albert Margenette, and the City Planner is Kevin Sumner. And I'll call the meeting to order and ask, are there any additions to the agenda?
There are no additions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. How about a conflict of interest by a member for this meeting or a meeting of which a member was not present? Any PAC members have a declaration of interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none.
No, I do.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
on
Robert.
On the McGarry application, I will be bowing out from that.
Okay. And then so that will be for D13-2303 and the concurring D10-2303. Is that correct, PAC member Bowman?
That's correct.
Okay. And then at that time, I think it'd probably be just best that you leave. And Albert, do you have Robert's contact information if you want to send him a quick text or something when it's good to join? Or Robert, did you, what's a way that we can get Robert back into the meeting for the last application, Albert?
Member Bowman has contacted me, and I'll be sending him an email when he is able to rejoin us.
Great. Okay, good. Any other conflicts or interest tonight? Okay, seeing none. Any last minute correspondence relating to the application, Albert, that we have before us tonight?
There's none, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And any adjournment requests made?
There are no adjournment requests, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. First up of the application D20 or D13-2305, identified as 100281553 Ontario. And may I ask who will be presenting tonight on that application?
Hi, I'm Paul Hambury. I'm here to represent the owner for that application.
Okay, and would you like to start with your application, please?
Sure. So the application is for a minor variance to reduce the required shoreline setback for a property on Peterson Drive. There were some images and maps sent out with the application. I hope everyone had a chance to see. I could share them now if needed. The property owner seeks to construct a new single-family home on the property due to the steep rock slopes and narrow depth of the site. This will be located in a relatively flat area, which is partly within the shoreline setback. So the requested variance would reduce the shoreline setback on this property from 20 meters to 5 meters. The construction is intended to meet all other zoning regulations. So given the challenges of the site, we feel that the proposed location is the only feasible site for the intended development. Overall, we feel that the intended development is consistent with the planned land use and fits in with the existing neighborhood. The property is zoned RR, rural residential, and is outside of the established area, so this neighborhood consists mainly of single-family homes on large forested lots with private water and sanitary. We feel that the development fits within the official plan, which encourages development of all forms of housing for a complete community. And it makes use of an existing lot with a road access and power infrastructure. So as described in the bylaws, the shoreline setback serves two main purposes: to protect people from flooding and protect waterways from adverse impacts. With regards to flooding, as shown in the images submitted with the application, we feel that the development will be well above the shoreline, even at that 5-meter setback. With that main floor of the house in the position shown being about 9 meters above the OPG flood easement, or 7 meters above the City of Kenora hazard lands designation. So building at this elevation, as shown, would be well above the high water levels and safe from flooding and erosion. In regards to natural heritage, the property does not contain or is not identified in city mapping with any adjacent special policy overlays or environmental hazards like fish spawning or waterfowl habitat. The development on the property intends to maintain a 5-meter natural vegetation area as described in the official plan along the shoreline, and a 10-meter natural vegetation area where possible on the site. The elevation of the build site allows for the reduced disturbance on the ecological systems at the shoreline. And the use of the site for a single-family residence allows much of the site to remain undisturbed. It's our understanding that the variance is minor in nature, not because of the size of reduction in setback, but because the variance doesn't require a change in bylaws. So there's many examples of existing buildings set within the typically required shoreline setback in and around Kenora. These situations are allowed where they don't conflict with the intent of planning policies. So we feel that the intent of the shoreline setback is being to protect from floods and preserve the natural environment. We feel that the development will be safe from flooding and have no significant impact on the natural environment. I don't know if you wanted me to share those images that were sent out with the application.
You could, if you want. We can give you sharing rights, or Kevin, would they be included in are they the same as the ones in the staff report? Or the ones in the files?
Yeah, I don't think I've used any of the applicant's images in the staff report, but certainly the copy of the application is available to PAC members on SharePoint, so you can see what was submitted. The PAC members can see that.
Okay. Anything else to add then, Paul?
I think there's a couple other questions there, Chair.
Yeah, I know. So Paul, I need to, I believe our minute taker might be asking for full name and address.
Paul Hanbury, 805 Airport Road, Kenora.
Alex, was there, and I apologize, Alex, is there another question that you had? I see your hand up previously, and I had thought maybe that's what it was. Alex,
no, Mr. Chair, that is my only question.
There it is. Okay, thanks. And Carrick, member Funk, did you have a question? I think your hand was up as well.
I just wasn't sure if you were seeing Alex's hand up, so
yeah.
Just checking in.
No problem. Thanks. Okay. Paul, if you have anything else, then Kevin, would you like to do your staff report then, please?
Yep, certainly I can proceed.
The only other thing I wanted to clarify is that the shoreline, like the road allowance, is owned on this property. It was purchased in 2008. Yeah, that's it. Kevin can go ahead.
Okay, yes, so this application, as we've already heard, is for a minor variance to the zoning bylaw to reduce the required shoreline front yard setback in the rural residential zone from 20 meters to 5 meters to accommodate development of the property. The subject property is located on the shores line of the Winnipeg River. It has 1.2 hectares in area and mostly tree covered and undeveloped. The applicant indicates that they wish to develop the property with a house and a garage, and that the proposed location is only feasible and cost-effective area in which this may be located. And there is a diagram to that effect in the application package that was available to members. You can also see in my site photo a panoramic view. It's a bit of a steep shoreline there, hard to capture what's on the property, but you can see how it does steeply slope down from Peterson Drive with limited or challenging accessibility due to a rock face on part of the property and a steep incline on other portions of the road frontage. Turning to consistency with legislative policy and city directives, under the provincial policy statement 2020, that statement permits residential development that is locally appropriate. It further states that development that is compatible with the rural landscape and can be sustained by rural service levels should be promoted. Under the City of Kenora official plan, the land use designation of the property is rural area. Policy 4.8 of the plan states the rural area includes a variety of agricultural, residential, industrial, commercial, recreation, tourism, and open space uses. And I should have referenced in this report, and it has been referenced already by the applicant, the flood levels along the Winnipeg River. The flood level in this area is 326 meters above sea level, which is essentially the flood rights of Ontario Power Generation, and the area, the setback would, I can confirm that the setback would place the proposed house and garage above that designated flood level. Sorry for neglecting that in my original draft of the report. Turning to the zoning bylaw, this property is zoned RR or rural residential. Development is subject to the regulations of section 4.5 of the zoning bylaw. Single detached dwellings are permitted in the RR zone. Waterfront lots in the RR zone must normally have a minimum shoreline front yard setback of 20 meters, thus necessitating this variance. We did complete an interdepartmental and agency circulation. The only comments we received back were from the engineering department, noting that the owners requested a 5-meter setback and showing a 9-meter setback would be sufficient to allow development of the property. All other comments were to express no concern. Turning to public comments, circulation was completed in accordance with section 45 of the Planning Act. And as of the date of this report, and subsequent to the since that time, no public comments have been received. Turning to my evaluation, no concerns have been identified. If approved, the requested minor variance will allow the owners to proceed with their planned development of a single detached dwelling and garage as proposed. The proposed development is similar to other recently developed lots on Peterson Drive. It appears that the development as proposed will comply with all other applicable regulations of the zoning bylaw. The rationale that the proposed building locations are the only suitable locations of the property are difficult to assess. It appears that a change in the proposed design might enable the owner to achieve a greater setback than what is being requested. And that was the root of the comment from the engineering department. But for the design being proposed, it seems reasonable that the 5-meter setback would be required to accommodate that design. Turning to the 4 tests of the application for minor variance. First of all, that the general intent and purpose of the city's official plan, the residential development is permitted with the rural area designation. In regards to general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw, per implementation of the official plan, the intent of the zoning bylaw is achieved where relief from a regulation may be granted if no negative impacts are anticipated. The proposed relief does not appear likely to impact upon neighboring uses. There were no concerns identified by internal departments or external agencies. Appropriate and third test being appropriate and desirable development of the land. A desirable development of land is development that is compatible with the established community, existing buildings and development, and the proposed development appears to be compatible with neighboring properties. And finally, the 4th test is the proposed variance minor in nature. The variance as requested can be considered minor, allowing sufficient relief to accommodate the proposed dwelling and garage on what the applicant claims to be the only suitable site for development on the property. Therefore, it's my recommendation that the Planning Advisory Committee takes into consideration any comments that may yet be received, and that the application D13-23-02 to seek relief from the City of Kenora zoning bylaw 101-2015, section 4.5.3 K, to allow for the location of a dwelling and garage with a required shoreline front yard setback of 5 meters, meets the 4 tests and should be approved. That
Thanks,
concludes
Kevin.
the report.
Paul, you've heard the staff report. Is there anything that you would like to add before I turn it over to the committee members here shortly?
I think we're good.
Okay, thanks, Paul. At this time, is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application? And is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak in opposition of the application? Seeing none, I'll turn it over to committee members for discussion or question. Any committee members have any questions or comments? Robert, we'll start with you, then Rennie, and then Tara. Robert, go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, you mentioned that the proposed development is similar to other recent developed lots in Peterson Drive. Does that mean that they have been approved for a 5-meter setback as well?
No, just in that it is a cottage and garage of this nature is similar to what we're seeing for development on other lots. So it's similar in use to what we've seen elsewhere. This lot is fairly exceptional for Peterson Drive in that it's so wide and shallow in comparison to most of the lots actually are fairly narrow and deep by comparison.
A follow-up, Robert, or are you good? Okay, Rennie, question?
Yes, my question is for Paul. There's mention in your rationale about the septic system. So you're putting a septic holding tank somewhere instead of a septic field. But how far from the shoreline is the holding tank? And where is it approximately?
We haven't designed a septic system yet. We're still, like, that'll be worked out with the health unit once we figure out where the buildings are going on the lot.
Okay.
But we are prepared that holding tank may be the only way that we can fulfill or like have a private waste system on this lot.
Follow-up question, Rennie?
No.
Or no? No? Tara, question?
My question had to do with the location of the septic field as well. Thanks.
Okay. Any other question? Oh, Andrea, question?
I was reading some stuff about how sometimes when you have very steep cliffs that there's a lot of rationale for having the 20-meter setback, like 20 meters is when it's very flat, and rationale for like having it to 10 meters when it's very steep. But Kevin, maybe you could tell us a little bit more, because I know that it was in my lifetime that they changed that back rule. Wasn't it also having to do with pollution and protecting the waterways? And like with the 5 meters is not very far, how are they going to keep like debris during the actual construction from falling into the river and protecting the river?
Well, in terms of the why there's a 20-meter setback, I'd say there's probably a variety of rationales behind that. At one time there was a 20-meter shoreline reserve along here, and that the foundation for the 20-meter measurement seems to be rooted in there as much as in anything else. And the idea around the original shoreline reserves was public access and the public accessibility in general of our lakes and rivers for public use. That is closed on this property and no longer a factor. But there are, as you note, preservation of riparian areas is facilitated by having setbacks, though that doesn't prevent in many cases people being able to clear those riparian areas. For non-structured development, there's very few areas in which we regulate the riparian areas in the city, primarily being on Black Sturgeon Lake. Other reasons are, flood hazard lands on areas where there's shallower banks and wetlands neighboring our lakes and rivers. We do have hazard lands that are based on flood elevation, which, as I've noted, is less of a concern just because of the steeply sloping nature of this property. It rises quite quickly out of out of anything that would be floodable. And I think just eyeballing it, looks like there'll be a couple of meters above the footprint of the building. It will be a couple of meters above the flood levels, and then at that it'll probably be perched up fairly well above that rock to get a level foundation. So as far as protecting the river during construction, that would be a question probably more applicable, more direct, suitable for the proponent who is more familiar with what their plans are for actual development of the property.
I was just more kind of wondering if the setback rationale, why it became law, was because we were protecting debris from falling into the river or any water.
Yeah, I'm not sure that debris per se would be one of the key things, but protecting, like I said, the shoreline and riparian areas from any unsuitable development and probably the variety of hazards that comes with that. We do limit the development of, say, accessory structures and docks and things like that would do impact on shorelines for that reason.
And then would they not also be permitted to like cantilever a deck or some kind of outdoor sitting area that would protrude from the building and the footprint?
Decks are permitted to encroach up to 2.5 meters into a required yard. So a deck on this dwelling would be able to project 2.5 meters into that 5 meter setback, which for anybody working in Imperial, that's about 8 feet into what is a 16-foot setback.
So they are going to be on the edge.
They won't be overhanging the water. It'll certainly be close, and seeing the slope, that deck will have quite a bit of clearance over the ground below it.
So my question, actually, one of them was going to be about the deck. So I wondered if the proponents had considered being able to push that building back. It looks like you're going to be creating your own foundation anyway for the main part of the building. And then I'm guessing, how is this building going to go up? How is the deck, as an example, going to be held up? Can I ask that through the chair, please?
Go ahead. Yeah. So that's to you, Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at this point, there is no deck as part of the plan. Like, these aren't the final design of this building. It's kind of pending what goes on here. As to pushing that building further back to the north, there is natural drainage there, which we're intending not to block with a concrete foundation on that portion of the house. It would be a concrete foundation to support this house as proposed at this point.
Okay, thank you. And do we know exactly how much above that flood datum line the house is going to be? And sorry, can I just follow up? And do we have any idea how last year's levels affected that property? How high up did that water come up last year?
I don't have any data about what happened last year on this property. We weren't looking at it at that point. But as the concept is designed right now, we're looking at being about 7 meters above the city hazard lands flooding designation.
Okie dokie, thank you.
A follow-up question, Tara, or no? No? Any other questions from the members of PAC? Okay, Albert, do you have a draft decision you'd like to share with us?
I do, Mr. Chair, that the application D13-23-05 for an unaddressed property on Peterson Drive legally identified as PIN 42161-0637 to seek relief from the City of Kenora bylaw 101-2015, section 4.5.3K, to allow the location of a dwelling and garage with a required shoreline front yard setback of 5 meters, meets the 4 tests and should be approved.
Thank you, Albert. Can I have a mover for that motion? Moved by Katowski and seconded by PAC member Bowman. And I will call the vote. All in favor, show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that motion would be carried. Albert?
Yes, I have that recorded, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you to.
Are you going to record the nays? Or does it just count as an N?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Alex, were you able to record those who voted in favor? I missed that in the draft decision. I noticed that we have a recorded vote. Were you able to capture that or no? I can recall the vote.
I did not capture the actual numbers and names of who voted in favor or opposed, but I can catch that with I know it's in favor. And when I go over the recording again, I will capture the actual names of who voted in favor.
Okay, so then we'll be
I
able
would
to
just
add
like you
it.
to record that there was people, because I've abstained before, but I didn't really want to abstain. I wanted to vote against.
I apologize. So you're right. So I did the motion carried. So my apologies. I'll backtrack. So those who wishes to nay on the motion by show of hands, please. And that's 2. My apologies, group. Thank you. Thanks, Andrew, for pointing that out. Albert, back to your conversation with the applicant or the representative.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Hanbury, for being here with us this evening and making your presentation. You received approval, but this is subject to a 20-day appeal period, which means that you will not be able to apply for a building permit until such time as this period has terminated. This will take us to June 5th, 2023. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to speak with the planning department. Notice of this decision will be sent to you via email on Thursday.
Thanks, Albert. Thanks for everyone's time.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, next item on the agenda, and I believe at this moment, PAC member Bowman, you're going to be leaving us for a while because it is application D13-2303, which is concurrent with D10-2303. So Robert will message you when you can come back, and Alex, if you can please record in the minutes that PAC member Bowman left the meeting at 6:28. Thank you. Next is those 2 applications, D13-2303, McGarry, and concurring land division D10-2303, McGarry, who will be presenting tonight for that application. And can you please state your name and the address for the minute taker, please?
It's Kevin McGarry, and the address is 121 Lamont Boulevard, Winnipeg, R3P 07E. Or 0E7 rather, 0E7.
Okay, and that's sorry, just to clarify, Lamont, Lemonte.
No E.
Okay, and the postal code again, I'm sorry.
R3P
R3P
0E7.
0E as in Edward 7.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Kevin. Now, at this time, do you have a presentation that you would like to make on behalf of the application?
Well, nothing formal. The plan, I read the planning report. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. and the planner is in favor. This is a minor variance and a minor redistribute or rejigging of the lot lines. One property becomes a little bigger, one property becomes a little smaller. The total is still the same. So as I say, I don't have a formal presentation. Open to questions, but the planning report was was very favorable, and certainly we support it.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Then at this time, then I'll just refer to Kevin. Would you like to present the staff report for the applications?
It would be my pleasure. And so I think this is maybe the first time the committee's seen a concurrent application like this. So when we have a consent and related minor variance, we like to cover it under one report, which is a little bit longer, but it ultimately saves us a bit of time. So as I mentioned, this is a application for consent for lot line readjustment and concurrent application for a minor variance to give some relief for some new setbacks, the proximity of structures to the new proposed property line for these two lots at 564 and 580 Coney Island. So the effect of the consent application will be to transfer 0.15 hectares of land between the two lots, with the result that all existing structures that will then be located on lot 1 or 564 Coney Island. An easement is proposed along the northern edge of lot 1 in favor of lot 2 for future access for construction on lot 2. And the proposed lot line realignment will result in lot 1 being increased in area to 0.6425 hectare and lot 2 being reduced in area to 0.4362 hectares. The existing boathouse will be located closer to the new proposed property line than is permitted in the zoning bylaw, thus necessitating this minor variance. So the two existing lots are located near the most southwesterly point of Coney Island. Lot 1 is currently developed with a seasonal residence and accessory structure. Lot 2 is currently developed with a boathouse, dock, and other accessory structures. Most of the remaining property is tree covered. Both lots front on and are accessed from Lake of the Woods and do not have access to municipal sewer or water. The seasonal water and sewer system services available to properties on some portion of the island do not extend to this area. And you can see in my report a map showing the current lot lines, and also a drawing submitted by the applicants illustrating the proposed and new lot lines. The existing lot lines being easy to see in that map is the difference, the separation between the yellow and the blue portions of that drawing. The blue line that's drawn over them represents the new proposed lot line, which you'll see actually takes a little bit of property off of lot 1 but transfers a large portion over to lot 2, or sorry, vice versa. And actually, sorry, I described that wrong. The proposed new lots are illustrated in yellow and blue, and it was the former lot line that's illustrated in blue. Sorry, I had those backwards in my description. There's no image, no photos from site visit with this application, as we weren't able to get access to the lake to take one. But hopefully the satellite imagery is sufficient for the members to understand what's going on there. Turning to consistency with legislative policy and city directives. First of all, the provincial policy statement 2020. The application is generally consistent with the policies of the policy statement, which promotes managing and directing land use to achieve efficient and resilient development and land use patterns. The lot line realignment and minor variance appears to be compatible with the rural landscape and could be sustained by rural service levels. Turning to the City of Kenora official plan, the land use designation of this property is rural area, which provides for a variety of agricultural, residential, industrial, commercial, recreational, tourism, and open space uses. In areas without municipal servicing, new lots are to be generally a minimum of 1 hectare. Turning to the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned RR, or rural residential zone. Development is subject to the regulations of section 4.5 of the zoning bylaw. Lots in this area must normally have a minimum lot frontage of 61 meters and a minimum lot area of 1 hectare. Accessory shoreline structures, including boathouses, are regulated under section 3.34.1C of the bylaw, which requires a minimum 4.5 meter side yard setback for any structure located between a principal building and a navigable waterway. Therefore, the minor variance is required to reduce the minimum required lot size for lot 2 from 1 hectare to 0.4362 hectares, and reduce the minimum required side yard for a shoreline accessory structure from 4.5 meters to 2.15 meters. The notice of complete application erroneously indicated the variance was required for lot 1, but no variance is necessary for that lot because it is being increased in area and will be brought closer to compliance with the bylaw. Turning to results of interdepartmental and agency circulation, both applications were circulated separately, and I've combined the comments received and summarized them on the table. Did note too late that Hydro One and our building department were accidentally left blank. There was no concerns from either one. Engineering indicated no concerns, but noted there is an easement across 580 Coney Island in favor of Hydro One. Hydro One, oh, sorry, this is where the Hydro One comment was. They had no concerns, but they noted it was outside of Hydro One territory. So the easement, I guess, would be noted, would be dated to a time when Hydro One was responsible for service. Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry noted that this property is located within CLUPA General Use Area G2603 Northern Peninsula. The policy report for this area recommends minimum frontages of 46 meters and depths of 90 meters for future private lots. The proposed lots appear to meet these recommendations. At this time, no known habitat or natural heritage features have been identified on this property, and as such, they are not recommending additional evaluation. If any wildlife features are identified, please advise the applicant to contact their office. Public comments, circulation of the complete application and hearing for minor variance and consent for lot line realignment was completed in accordance with section 53 of the Planning Act. As of the date of the writing of this report, and since, no public comments have been received. So turning to my evaluation, first in regards to the application for minor variance, section 3.15.5 of the official plan states that new development shall be assessed for compatibility with the established community and ability to coexist with existing development without causing undue adverse impacts on surrounding properties. The proposed lot line realignment and associated variances will not result in the creation of a new lot, and the boathouse is existing on the property, so there's no reason to expect that approval of the variance will negatively impact neighboring properties. Then the 4 tests, first of all, general intent and purpose of the official plan. The existing lots are smaller than what is recommended in the rural area, so there is no new undersized lots being created with the realigned lot line. The use of the properties for seasonal residential use is supported in the rural area. Turning then to the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw. As per implementation of the official plan, intent of the zoning bylaw is achieved where relief from a regulation may be granted if no negative impacts are anticipated. There were no concerns identified by internal departments or external agencies. No new development is being proposed in connection with the application. The boathouse is situated up against a steep cliff that will result in a greater separation from any development on lot 2 than would be the case if this was a flatter property. Any future development will need to comply with setback requirements. Turning to appropriate and desirable development of the land. Desirable development of land is development that is compatible with the established community, existing buildings and development. There's no reason to expect that the reconfigured lots will make a significant difference in the future use and development of the properties or the impact of any development on neighboring properties. And finally, the proposed variance is minor in nature. The variance as requested is minor, in my opinion. No new lots are being created and no new structures are being proposed. Then turning to my evaluation of the application for consent, the application is supported by the policies of both the provincial policy statement and the official plan, and is compatible with the regulations of the RR rural residential zone of the zoning bylaw, with the exception that the lot area and accessory structure setback requirements, which required the concurrent minor variance, as both the existing and realigned lots are undersized for the RR zone and new lots are being created. The proposed consent results in no significant changes to the properties or opportunity for development that would not be permitted under the current lot configuration. I note for the record the legislative framework for consent approval and move forward with my recommendation. First of all, my recommendation on the application for minor variance is that the Planning Advisory Committee takes into consideration those comments that may yet be received, and that the application D13-23-03 to seek relief from the City of Kenora zoning bylaw 101-2015, section 4.5.3B, which requires a minimum lot area of 1 hectare for property zoned RR, rural residential zone, and from section 3.34.1C, which requires a minimum side yard setback of 4.5 meters for accessory uses located between the principal building and a navigable waterway, to permit a reduction in the lot size of 580 Coney Island to 0.4362 hectares, and the location of a boathouse at 564 Coney Island with a minimum side yard setback of 2.15 meters. And further, that the application meets the 4 tests prescribed under the Planning Act, and that it be hereby resolved that the Planning Advisory Committee approves application D13-23-03. And then in my recommendation in regards to consent D10-23-03 is that the application for consent for lot addition on properties located at 564 and 580 Coney Island and legally described as pins 42162-0053 and 42162-0054, City of Kenora, be approved and provisional consent be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that the original executed transfer/deed of land form, a duplicate original, and 1 photocopy for city records be provided for each parcel. 2, that a schedule for the transfer/deed of land form, which is set out the entire legal description of the pins in question and containing the names of the parties indicated on page 1 of the transfer/deed of land form be provided for each parcel. 3, that minor variance D10-23-03 is approved. And 4, that 3 original copies and 1 PDF copy of the reference plan of survey bearing the land registry office registration number and signatures as evidence of deposit therein and illustrating the parts to which the consent approval relates, which will show in general the same area and dimensions as the sketch forming part of the application be provided. 5, that the payment of outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, and any local improvement charges, if applicable, shall be paid to the City of Kenora. 6, that prior to endorsement of the deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the owner or owner's agent/solicitor confirming that conditions number 1 through number 5 have been fulfilled. Clearance from the City of Kenora and external agencies as required are to be included. And finally, 7, that all costs associated with extension of services, driveway installation surveys, legal fees, and matters related to the application are the responsibility of the developer/applicant. And I note that sections 5341 and 5343 will apply in regards to the consent application. With that, I conclude my report.
Thanks, Kevin. Kevin, you heard the staff report. Is there anything you want to add before I turn it over to the public and the committee members?
Nope, that's fine, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of both the applications? Is there anyone in the public who would like to speak in opposition of either or both applications? Seeing and hearing none, we'll turn it over to committee members. Any discussion or comments? Tara, you first.
Sure, thank you. Through the chair, Mr. McGarry, how is the boathouse serviced with hydro?
Yes, it is.
And where does that hydro come from?
How do you mean?
So is it coming off of the pole?
No,
that's-
it comes from the cottage, comes from the main cottage.
Okay, I was just wondering if there's gonna need.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
to be an easement. No, that's great, thank you.
No follow-up, Tara. Any Jay, you have your hand up? Question?
Yeah, I have 2 just clarifications. Since you're rejigging the boundaries anyway, why not draw a boundary that can achieve that 4.5 minimum side yard?
Well, first of all, I don't think it's necessary. It's this very steep cliff that rises up between the boathouse and where that property line is. And to rejig it, you'd actually be creating kind of an arc around that one little piece which encroaches. It didn't seem practical.
Okay, my other question, can I ask both together?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Jay. Yeah, unless you have a follow-up for your first question, if you have a.
No, I think, and the way Kevin Sumner described the cliff in the report, I was assuming that was the key factor. Okay, and
go
the
ahead
other
with
one
your
is
second.
just I'm curious about these corridors for future construction. What is the point of that easement to create access on both shorelines?
That easement is to allow materials both for a septic field and for construction, because the frontage on the east facing east of that lot 2 is very steep.
Mm.
And it would be very difficult to get any materials, particularly septic field materials up there. And so the easement, it makes sense to create the easement now primarily for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other members with questions or comments? Andrea, yeah, Andrea, it looked like you had your hand up. Go ahead, Andrea.
So the boathouse, like a lot of boathouses have like second levels and people build like bunkies on top of the boathouses. Is that, what is this boathouse like?
It's actually a boat port, so it's a bit of a misnomer. It's single story. No, unless you're grandfathered, i.e. you've had a second story on your boathouse. I don't know what the date is, but it probably goes back into the 1950s. You can't do it. It's not allowed.
Follow-up question, Andrea, or no?
I was just
oh.
making sure that there wasn't already like
No. No, it's a boat port.
residential space.
No, it's single story boat port, open all sides.
Any other members with questions? Okay, Albert, I'll turn it over to you. Would you like to do I think we'll start with the minor variance first. Can you give us the draft decision for the minor variance D13-2303?
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. The decision being that the Kenora Planning Advisory Committee takes into consideration those comments that may yet be received, and that the application D13-23-03 to seek relief from the City of Kenora zoning bylaw 101-2015, section 4.5.3b, which requires a minimum lot area of 1 hectare for properties zoned RR, rural residential zone, and from section 3.34.1c, which requires a minimum side yard setback of 4.5 meters for accessory uses located between the principal building and a navigable waterway, to permit a reduction in lot size of 500, to permit a reduction in the lot size of 580 Coney Island to 0.4362 hectares, and the location of a boathouse at 564 Coney Island with a minimum side yard setback of 2.15 meters, and further that the application meets the 4 tests prescribed by the Planning Act and should be approved.
Thank you, Albert. Yeah, Tara, you had a quick
I just
question?
wonder, Albrecht, if you could take out the preamble you have that said something, I think it's just a cut and paste thing, where it says taking into consideration the comments that may yet to be received. Could you take that
Absolutely,
out?
Member Rickaby.
And then I will not make you read that over again. But I will also I'll move to adopt that resolution.
Okay, so moved by Tara, seconder, please. Seconder by Jay. And at this time, I'll ask all in favor, and please hold your hand until Alex can then record the vote for us, please. So all in favor of the application, and Alex, just let us know when you've recorded the vote. Okay, and that would be unanimous, so there would be no nays. Albert, would you like to have a discussion?
you.
Or actually, no, let's just save it. Albert, why don't we go to the draft decision of the concurring one, D 132303.
Believe you mean D 10-23-03
Yeah.
member, or sorry.
Yeah,
Chair
the other tab on my computer. Yes, sorry,
Yes.
D 102303.
No problem. All right, the decision being that application D 10-23-03 for consent of lot addition on properties located at 564 and 580 Coney Island and legally described as pins 42162-0053 and 42162-0054, City of Kenora, be approved and provisional consent be granted, subject to the conditions of the planning report.
Thank you, Albert. Can I get a mover for that motion, please? Moved by Jay, seconded by Carrick. And all in favor? Show of hands, please. And let us just give me a thumbs up, Alex, when you got the recorded vote. Thanks. One point of note, Albert, when you take a look at the draft decision, there's a cut and paste of some voting already in there, so you might want to make those adjustments in whatever was on SharePoint. But I'll let you go ahead and have your communication with the applicant about the two applications.
Absolutely. So thank you, Mr. McGarity, for your application and being here with us this evening. You've received approval for this subject to a 20-day appeal period, which means that you will be unable to apply for any building permits until such time that this period is terminated. This will take us to June 5th, 2023. If you have any questions about this, please feel free to speak with the planning department. Notice of this decision will be sent to you via email. As well, you have received conditional approval this evening. You do have 2 years to meet the conditions of this consent. I will send you notice of this decision as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and ask them.
All right. Thank you very much to the committee and to you, Albert.
Thank you. Thank you, Kevin. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
If anybody needs to take a quick break, Albert, I think you're going to reach out to Robert to invite him back. And Alex, you had a question? And still on mute, Alex. There we go.
Yes, committee member Funk, I'm sorry, I don't seem to have your first name here.
Kevin.
If I could please, Kevin, okay.
Carrick.
K-E-V-I-N?
No, Carrick.
K-E-R-I-C.
K-E-R-I-C, Carrick. Thank you very much, member Funk.
Okay, so if anybody needs a quick break while we wait for Robert to rejoin us, and then we can move on to the next one. Welcome back, Robert. We just we'll just wait for Carrick to join us and Alex to just join us. We just took a quick little break while we waited for you to join us. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Alex, if you could just reflect in the minutes at 6:55, Robert or PAC member Bowman rejoined us, and we will move on to application B102301. And may I ask who will be presenting on behalf of this application? State your name and address, please.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Name is Kim Maya. Address is 213 Wider Drive, Kenora, P9N4R3.
Okay, and do you have a presentation to give to the committee?
Again, nothing formal, but I'll keep my comments brief, just in interest of your time. I believe I'm second to last, so you're probably all wanting to get outside. Anyways, so I'm here tonight seeking approval for an application for consent with respect to a proposed lot addition. As I said, I know Kevin will be running through his report in more detail, so I'll just go over some highlights. We're proposing to sever approximately 0.07 hectares from our property located at 213 Wider Drive, and have that land added to the adjacent property located at 160 Wider Road. We're doing this in order to rectify a minor encroachment issue resulting from an underground water line which services the property at 160 Wider Road. If this application is approved, the retained land, so our lands, would have an area of approximately 27.83 hectares, and the adjacent land, 160 Wider Road, would be increased to an area of approximately 3.21 hectares. Both would remain well above the minimum lot size requirement for both rural residential as well as the rural zones. I would just like to reiterate that approval of this application would not create any new lots, and no new structures or development is proposed as a result of this application. I believe those are the pertinent details. I'll let Mr. Sumner touch on the further details in his planning report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Kevin, would you like to present the staff report, please, for the members?
Yes, certainly. So as we've heard, this application is an application for consent to sever, in this case, a 0.07 hectare parcel of land from the subject property and add that parcel to the adjacent 3.4 hectare property at 160 Wider Road. No new lots are being created. So the subject property is located on the east shore of Black Sturgeon Lake and has an area of approximately 28 hectares. The northwestern portion of the property, including the area of the proposed severance, is largely tree covered. The central and southeastern portions of the property contain a mix of forested and cleared areas. A dwelling and accessory structure are located near the southeastern corner of the property with access from Wider Drive. An underground water line services the neighboring property at 160 Wider Road, currently encroaching on the subject property in the area of the proposed severance. And the applicant, as we've heard, is proposing to add that parcel to the adjacent lot. Turning to consistency with legislative policy and city directives, the provincial policy statement, which promotes managing and directing land use to achieve efficient and resilient development and land use patterns. The PPS states that development that is compatible with the rural landscape and could be sustained by rural service levels should be promoted. The City of Kenora's official plan, the land use designation of the subject property is rural area, which provides for a variety of agricultural, residential, industrial, commercial, recreational, tourism, and open space uses. Under the zoning bylaw, the property is zoned RR, or rural residential zone. Development in the RR zone is subject to the regulations of section 4.5 of the zoning bylaw. Lots in this area zone must have a minimum lot area of 1 hectare. Adjacent properties along the shoreline in the area of the proposed severance, including the property at 160 Wider Road that the proposed parcel will transfer to, are zoned RU, or rural zone. Lots in the RU zone must have a minimum lot area of 2 hectares. Both the properties exceed the minimum zoning requirements for lot area and will continue to do so following the proposed severance and lot addition. We circulated the application for departmental and agency circulation, and no concerns were identified in the responses from any of those departments or agencies. In terms of public comment, the circulation of the application was completed in accordance with section 53 of the Planning Act as of the date of the report, and since no public comments have been received. So I'll proceed to my evaluation, which is if approved, the proposed lot addition will correct an existing water line encroachment. The application is supported under the provincial policy statement and the City of Kenora official plan and is compliant with the City of Kenora zoning bylaw number 101-2015. No new lots are being created and the lot addition will not create an opportunity for significant new development beyond what is currently permitted on both properties. I note for the record, the legislative framework for consent approval and proceed to my recommendation, which is that application D10-23-01 for consent for lot addition on property located at 213 Wider Drive, legally described as pin 42134-0194, City of Kenora, be approved with provisional consent to be granted, subject to the following. One, that the original executed transfer / deed of land form, a duplicate original, and one photocopy for city records be provided for each parcel. Two, that a schedule for the transfer / deed of land form, in which is set out the entire legal description of the pins in question and containing the names of the parties indicated on page 1 of the transfer / deed of land form, is to be provided for each parcel. Three, that the lands to be transferred for lot addition be surveyed and described on a reference plan, and that a draft is provided to the planning department for pre-approval. Four, that the newly created lot be consolidated on title with the adjacent lot identified as 160 Wider Road, or pin number 42134-0192. And if recommended on solicitor review, that a merger agreement be entered into. Five, that 3 original copies and 1 PDF copy of the reference plan of survey bearing the land registry office registration number and signatures as evidence of deposit therein, and illustrating the parts to which the consent approval relates, which must show in general the same area and dimensions as the sketch forming part of the application, be provided. 6, that the payment of any outstanding taxes, including penalties and interest, and any local improvement charges, if applicable, shall be paid to the City of Kenora. 7, that prior to endorsement of deeds, the Secretary Treasurer shall receive a letter from the owner or owner's agent / solicitor confirming that conditions number 1 through number 6 are being fulfilled. Clearance from the City of Kenora and external agencies as required are to be included. And 8, that all costs associated with survey, legal fees, and matters related to the application are the responsibility of the developer / applicant. I note for the record that sections 5341 and 5343 of the Planning Act apply. And with that, I conclude my report.
Thanks, Kevin. Kim, you heard the staff report. Is there anything you'd like to add or any other comment before I move on to the public and committee members?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thanks. Is there anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Is there anyone in the public that would like to speak in opposition of the application? Okay, I'll turn it over to committee members. Any committee members have any questions with regards to the application? None. So Kevin, I do have one, and it goes back from previous experience of previous PAC members. There was a time where there wasn't much desire to do little chunks of land and try to like square up the lot line proposed to follow the exact lot line, so you don't have this little bump on the end. Is there any desire for that on a city planning aspect, or even it looks like I'm saying, it looks like a bit of a surveying nightmare where it would be just easier to take it from that point and go straight to the road. So I just wouldn't mind some feedback or information on that, Kevin.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns with the lot line as proposed. I don't see it likely to impact any proposed or known future development. This property is zoned rural residential, so certainly could see a fair amount of future development if the landowner ever decided, and I don't to proceed with that. But having this corner severed off, I can't see it impacting anything.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Any comments? Albert, I'll turn it to you. Can you give us please the draft decision?
I'll turn myself off mute here. I will identify first that I made a mistake in the decision that was submitted on SharePoint. I have made the amendments here. The amended decision being that application D10-23-01 for consent for lot addition on property located at 213 wider drive legally described as PIN 42134-0194, City of Kenora, be approved and that provisional consent be granted, subject to the conditions identified in the planning report.
Okay, thanks, Albert. Can I get a mover for that motion? Moved by Tara, seconded by Andrea, and by show of hands, all in favor? And Alex, just give us a thumbs up when you're good. And there'd be no opposed. Great. Albert, back to you.
Right, thank you, Ms. Maya. You have received conditional approval here this evening. You do have 2 years to meet the conditions. I will send you notice of this decision, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me and address them.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda, D14-2304, a temporary use. And I'll ask who's presenting to state your name and mailing address for the minute taker, please.
Sure. My name is Amy Dieger and my mailing address is 761 River Road, Winnipeg, Manitoba.
Okay, and do you have a presentation that you would like to make on behalf of the application?
I just have a short something to say. I also don't have a formal presentation and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I thought it would be helpful to provide some context for the request of our temporary use. So we purchased a camper mid-summer last year and had it moved out to our property because we had anticipated starting the build of our home in Kenora at that time. Then we had some setbacks with builders and whatnot. So we are now applying for temporary use of that camper while our home is being built. My partner, Evan, is currently working in Kenora and has accommodations at a neighbor's place until the end of the month or early June. And he's been working out there since November. I'm still working in Winnipeg, but plan to relocate to Kenora as well. So we're not building a cottage, we're actually building a permanent home and want to make ourselves part of the community. It came to our attention last year in the fall that we knew we could have the camper on our property during construction, but we didn't know that there was an application for that. And so Kevin, I've been in correspondence with Kevin since the fall, discussing how we could make that work. We have all of our permits in place. Our septic system is scheduled to go in as soon as the road restrictions come off. I'm in Winnipeg, so maybe they came off already. I'm not sure. I just got word today that our home is ready. It's currently in storage. We're doing a ready to move house. So we'll be able to bring that onto the property midsummer. So we're seeking the temporary use of our camper as a dwelling for the period between now and when our home arrives, so that Evan can continue to work in Kenora and we don't put any additional burden on the housing situation in Kenora. Or have to seek temporary accommodations for a month, which isn't ideal at this time. We have made several plans to ensure that there is limited impact of our camper as possible. We have cleared a section of our property zoned rural residential. So we have hazard land and rural residential, as I'm sure you've seen in the report. Evan has cleared property in the residential area so that our camper can be moved into the wooded area. This will prevent it from being seen from the Winnipeg River waterway, as well as from the road while he drive. And it is cleared from our building site. And we have been using Stephen Bell at A1 Septic Services or drainage services to come and clear our Grand Black water. Our camper is currently does not have water in it, and we haven't been using it since November of last year. And so we bring our application forward to the city at this time for seeking temporary use of that unit. Thank you for your time. I know it's getting late on a Tuesday night and I appreciate you sticking around for me being last.
That's okay. Amy. Thanks for hanging in there being last.
Yeah.
So Kevin, would you like to present the staff report, please?
Yes, certainly. So I think this is the first temporary use bylaw, the application that the committee's seen. I have reason to expect that there may be others coming forward this summer, but certainly welcome any questions about that at the end of my report, or about the temporary use bylaw, which it is a bit peculiar, and I don't think we've covered it in the training, just other than mentioning it. So. But anyways, so this application has been received for, as you've heard, for the approval of the use of the property as a campground for a recreational vehicle for a period of up to 2 years. While the use of the property in the RR zone as a campground is not normally permitted, Section 39 of the Planning Act gives councils the right through a temporary use bylaw to authorize the temporary use of land, buildings, or structures for any purpose that is otherwise prohibited by the zoning bylaw. So the applicants, as you've heard, intend to locate a camper on the subject property for a period of up to 2 years until they can complete the construction of a dwelling on the property. The subject property was created as part of a 9-lot subdivision in 2014. Since that time, the city of Kenora has not received any permits or related applications for development of the property. As a result of a bylaw enforcement complaint, the city became aware that this property and adjoining properties were in use as campgrounds, which was not permitted. Property owners were contacted with a request to bring the properties into compliance, and property owners wishing to legally establish the temporary use of a property as a campground while constructing permanent residence were informed by the city that the city was willing to accept applications for a temporary use bylaw for a single temporary use campsite, with the expectation that any such applications would meet the following criteria, which the applicants have, which is that permanent buildings be located on land zoned as rural residential, that applicants must have applied for and obtained a permit for construction of a permanent dwelling on the same property as the proposed temporary use, and that applicants must submit an approved permit for a septic system from the Northwestern Health Unit for wastewater from the campground use, so that they can be handled on site. At the time of the original subdivision, a site plan agreement was signed between the developer and the city of Kenora. The agreement stipulates that the lots, including this one, are subject to no development or removal of riparian area for a buffer of 5 meters from the high water mark, except for a 10% right of disturbance for the purposes of locating water lines and docks. And you can see part of the reason for that in figure 1 in my report, which was taken during last summer's flood. You can see that a portion of the shoreline properties, shoreline areas of these properties was inundated by those floodwaters, which were high but did not reach the designated flood level, the flood rights enjoyed by Ontario Power Generation. So it is reasonable to anticipate that there could be higher flood waters in a future year. A subdivision agreement was also entered into at the time of the original development, stipulating that there is to be no disturbance of aquatic vegetation and requiring that agreements of purchase and sale include the notification to purchasers that the city requires building construction and septic field placement, including mantle in areas on purchased lots having a height above sea level of 320.6 meters, CGVD 28. So that 326 meters is based on the flood rights of Ontario Power Generation. And so we won't be permitting development or septic fields below that flood level. And you can see I included an image of the property from last fall of the use of the property, and also an image from our GIS showing the contour lines on the property, just to give an idea of the elevations that are existing there. Also included a panoramic view of the property from Lockheed Drive, mostly to make sure that everybody's looking at the right property along that drive. Legislative policy and city directives, turning there too. First of all, the provincial policy statement 2020, the PPS states that development that is compatible with the rural landscape and could be sustained by rural service levels should be promoted. Turning to the city of Kenora official plan, the land use designation of the property is rural area. Policy 4.1 of the plan states that permitted uses shall include a variety of agricultural, residential, industrial, commercial, recreational, tourism, and open space uses. The official plan in guiding the implementation of the zoning bylaw allows that council may pass a bylaw to allow the temporary use of lands that do not comply with the land use designation of the plan, provided that A, the temporary use does not require major capital investment or alteration to the existing landscape. B, the proposed use is compatible with surrounding land uses. C, the proposed use does not require the extension of municipal services. D, the developer has entered into an agreement with the municipality specifying the conditions under which the use may be permitted. And E, the bylaw shall specify a maximum time period for which the use may be permitted. Turning then to the zoning bylaw, the western portion of the property adjacent to Lockheed Drive is currently zoned RR, rural residential zone. This zone allows for the development of low density, single detached, seasonal or permanent housing and compatible uses in a rural setting. The eastern portion of the property, which is located below the 320.6 meter elevation, is zoned HL or hazard land zone. The HL zone is identified with hatching on figure 6 in my report. The HL zone identifies lands which are susceptible to flooding or erosion or any other type of physical characteristics which could cause harm to persons or lead to the deterioration of buildings and structures. Only very limited development may be permitted on the HL zone, including wildlife conservation reserves, docks, farms, parks, and parking. The unpermitted campground use documented by bylaw enforcement was at the time located on the HL zone. Under the zoning bylaw, campers, tents, and recreational vehicles are only permitted to be occupied in campsites in a campground, which is normally only permitted in the TR or tourist recreational zone. No other zoning use category permits the occupation of campers, tents, and recreational vehicles, even temporarily. Trailers may be parked and stored on a lot in any zone with an existing permitted use, but may not be occupied during storage. Therefore, this temporary use bylaw must be approved if the applicants wish to have a camper located on the property during construction of the primary dwelling. Turning then to interdepartmental and agency circulation. Some of the comments I received, first of all, from the bylaw enforcement and the city clerk. They noted there was 2 campers parked on the property during a site inspection of September 2022, which showed signs that they were occupied at that time in contravention of the zoning bylaw. Bylaw enforcement and development services receive many reports each summer season to investigate and enforce similar situations in which vacant properties, mainly lakefront, have been acquired and campers placed to be used as seasonal cottages or cabins with no signs of building activity. If a temporary use provision is permitted in this case, we could expect many more applications from property owners for the same permissions for a 3-year duration and beyond. If a temporary use provision is granted, it is suggested it be limited to a 2-year construction period. It would be required that all temporary use provisions issued are monitored and tracked. These timelines should be much shorter than 3 years, and in this particular case, they already had 1 year or more. Engineering also comment noting that they recommend stipulating the total number of recreational vehicles for the purpose of a dwelling to be limited to 1 for the duration of their approval. Turning then to public comments. So the public meeting is scheduled to be held by council on June 14th. Notice of the application was given in accordance with section 34 of the Planning Act, whereby it was circulated to property owners within 120 meters. It is being published in the municipal memo and it was circulated to persons and public bodies as legislated. Just on that municipal memo, due to an administrative error, the municipal memo notice was not placed prior to the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, but will meet the statutory requirements for notice prior to the council meeting, and it will be in this week's memo. The notice stated the time and date of the Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and the minutes and relevant resolution from this meeting will be forwarded to council for their information. As of the date of the report, and since no comments have been received from the public. Finally, my evaluation in October 2022, the subject property was in use as a campground with associated clearing and preparation of a campsite and a road through the floodplain to the adjacent property, which can be seen on the aerial imagery. The planning department identified a temporary use bylaw as a compromise solution that will permit the short-term continued use of the property as a campground under very specific circumstances, including the issuance of a building permit from the city of Kenora for the residents and a septic system approval from the Northwestern Health Unit. It is being recommended that the camper be required to connect to the septic system for the duration of its use, and that campground be restricted to the portion of the property that is zoned RR, rural residential, above the flood level of the Winnipeg River. Therefore, it's my recommendation as planner for the city of Kenora that the application for temporary use bylaw file number D14-23-04 to permit the temporary use of the property legally described as pin 42152-0467 for a campground for a single recreational vehicle for a period of up to 2 years in the rural residential zone should be approved. That concludes my report.
Thanks, Kevin. Amy, you heard the report. Is there anything you want to add before I turn it over to the public or committee members?
Nope, I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone in the public who wishes to speak in favor of the application? Looks like it's just us. So anyone in the public wish to speak in opposition of the application? I'll turn it over to committee members for discussion or comment. Any questions from the committee members? Robert, go ahead.
Kevin, in your report, you'd mentioned that there was 2 campers parked on the property that were occupied and in contravention of the zoning bylaw. Are those campers still there or have they been removed? I guess I'm asking.
Yeah, the campers at the time of our investigation appeared to be occupied. I can't say that they for sure that they were. We do know that there was 2 campers on site. When I inspected the property earlier this month, it appeared that both campers were still there. So one would have to be removed to be brought into compliance with the bylaw or with the temporary use if approved.
Robert, follow-up question?
Yeah, Amy, is that the plan then?
Yes, we are planning to sell the second camper. So we were hoping to leave it stored until we could sell it this season, but it will be up for sale. Yes.
So Kevin, I do have a question then. I know it was recommended that only one recreational vehicle be permitted, but I struggle with that a little bit because 2 16 or 2 20-foot campers is nothing compared to a 45-foot pusher. So I don't know what mechanism are we going to use. It seems borderline unfair that we would say 1 unit, but understanding we don't want to turn it into a campground where all of the staff are going to stay during the construction of it. So that's where I maybe struggle with that. Kevin, can you provide any feedback on that? And then just to confirm that we are going to only allow 1 camper to be habitable, right? It's not that they can't have 2 on there. It's just only 1 could be lived in, correct?
Yes, so one could be stored on site, only 1 could be inhabited as proposed. The rationale in proposing to support 1 camper is to accommodate the residents, whether it be permanent or temporary, of a set of property owners during the period of construction. It wasn't the intent isn't to support any additional work crews or anybody else who may be on the property because as you mentioned, we don't want to support turning it into a campground now. So that's our recommendation from administration, from the planning department. Certainly the committee is free to make whatever recommendation you wish to council for consideration in their final decision.
Okay. I don't think it's much of an issue for this application. It seems like the applicant is very willing to just have the 1 camper unless her and her spouse gets into a major fight. Well, then maybe they might sit in the other one for a while, but I can't see it being an issue. Any other comments or questions from the committee members? Okay, seeing none, then Albert, could you go ahead with the draft decision then, please?
You're muted, Albert.
Sorry, pardon me. That the application for temporary use bylaw file number D14-23-04 to permit the temporary use of a property legally described as pin 42152-0467 for a campground for a single recreational vehicle for a period of up to 2 years in the RR rural residential zone should be approved.
Thanks, Albert. Can I get a mover for that? Moved by Carrick and seconded by Rennie. And all in favor, show of hands. And Alex, just give us the thumbs up when you got us all. It's like all of us.
Committee member Campbell, is your hand
Yeah,
up to
she has-
agree or your question?
No, oh,
Oh, it's my vote.
Okay, thank you.
okay, thank you. And Albert, communication to the applicant approving. Thank you.
Absolutely, Mrs. Dieger. Thank you for being here with us this evening and making your presentation to the Planning Advisory Committee. There will be a statutory public hearing for this application on June 14th at 12 p.m. noon. If you have any questions, please contact us. The Planning Advisory Committee has made the recommendation for approval of your application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all very much for your time, and thank you to Kevin and Albert for answering my many, many questions throughout this process.
All right, thank you, and have a good evening. Amy. Old business, we don't have any old business, I believe, Albert or Kevin, nothing?
I believe you have to approve the minutes.
Yeah, so I moved that under new business because I had missed that. So there's no old business. I have the approval of the minutes of the last regular meeting of April 18th and the special meeting of May 2nd. So is there any errors or omissions on either of those? Go ahead, Albert.
Member Rickaby, member Wetter, and I believe member Renee Robert all identified minor grammatical errors that have since been approved or since been amended.
Okay, so then I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes as amended for both April the 18th and May the 2nd. Moved by Andrea, seconded by, first hand up, Rennie. Saw her first, sorry. And all in favor? Looks like that's all of us there, Alex. I have nothing else under new business. Anyone else? Oh, Tara, you had a question?
No, I just have a comment. So I'm kind of a nosy person. I watch a lot of council and committee of the whole meetings. And the last one actually piqued my interest because it said Planning 101. So I just wanted, I don't know if anybody's had a chance, and I hope that you do take the time to have a look at what Kevin put up on SharePoint. He did a really great presentation to council, and because they, I mean, you know, they are learning too what planning's all about. And so I just thought it was really good. And I asked him if he'd put it up on SharePoint for everybody else to have a look at as well. So thanks, Kevin.
You're welcome.
Great. Any other comments before I ask for an adjournment?
I just want to know where that file
Okay.
is. I'm not-
So it's a planning advisory committee. So it's on our SharePoint under, I believe it's training. Just let me
Okay.
double check. Yeah, PAC training 2023. And then if you double click on there, you should see the planning 101 presentation that Kevin did on May 10th.
Or you can even go in and watch the YouTube committee of the whole.
Yeah, YouTube committee of the whole will do it too. Great.
Kevin, I
Any
have
other-
a question on an
Yeah, go ahead,
unrelated
Andrea.
matter. I was wondering if I could ask you after we adjourn.
Just for me, Andrea, or other
For
people?
Kevin.
Oh, for
yeah,
Kevin,
sure.
not a problem. Yeah. Any other questions? Motion to adjourn, first hand up. Oh, Tara, you won. So enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. We'll all drop off, and then Kevin and Andrea, you can just stay on and have your chat. Don't forget though that it is recorded still, unless Albert, you want to stop the recording. Okay, so just
You
be
can probably
careful.
just stop recording there, Albert, before you
Yeah.
leave.